A freezing, liquid slurry of thick gray mud drips from the wooden roof beams of your dugout, splashing directly onto your face and snapping you awake at 4 a.m. You sit up on a rotting wooden ammunition crate, your back screaming in pain. You are inside a subterranean trench shelter near a battered hill known as Fleury-devant-Douaumont, right in the heart of the Verdun sector in northeastern France. It is June 1916. You reach down into the dark, feeling the wet wool of your horizon blue capote, your double-breasted infantry overcoat. It weighs over 20 pounds, soaked through with icy rainwater, caked in dried clay, and crawling with body lice that bite relentlessly into your chest and thighs. You reach for your casque Adrian, the thin steel helmet stamped with the flaming grenade emblem of the French infantry, and strap it tightly over your head. You don't look like a proud, romantic soldier on a propaganda poster. You are a Poilu, a hairy one, an exhausted, mud-spattered French infantryman who hasn't bathed, shaved, or slept more than 2 consecutive hours in 28 days. Hollywood movies like to depict World War I trenches as neat, organized wooden corridors with duckboards, sandbags, and clear firing steps. The reality ever done in 1916 is a nightmare of raw, apocalyptic destruction. There are no neat trenches left here. Millions of high-explosive artillery shells have pulverized the landscape into a featureless, lunar wasteland of waterlogged craters, shredded barbed wire, and unburied human remains. Entire villages have been erased from the map, reduced to gray dust. You are standing in the most brutal war of attrition in human history, a battle designed by German General Erich von Falkenhayn, with a single, horrifying objective: to bleed France white. Here, victory isn't measured in miles gained. It is measured in how many men can be pulverized by artillery before the line breaks. It is 4:30 a.m. You sit in the damp gloom, taking out a small wooden rag to clean the bolt of your Lebel Model 1886 rifle. This weapon is your shadow. Fixed to its muzzle is a 17-inch triangular needle bayonet, affectionately nicknamed Rosalie by the troops. Next to you sits Henri, a 32-year-old farmer from Lyon with a thick mustache and eyes that have gone completely hollow. He hands you a tin canteen. You shake it. There's no water inside. Only Pinard, a cheap, sour, heavily watered-down red wine issued by the French army. Clean drinking water doesn't exist at Verdun. The shell craters surrounding your dugout are filled with green, stagnant rainwater tainted with sulfur, lead, and rotting flesh. Drinking from them brings instant dysentery. Pinard is the fuel that keeps the French army standing. It dulls your nerves, numbs the freezing cold, and gives you just enough artificial courage to stay in the trench when the earth begins to shake. You take a long gulp, feeling the bitter alcohol burn your dry throat. 6:15 a.m. The sky overhead turns a pale, sickly gray. Suddenly, the silence of the morning is shattered by a sound that defies human comprehension. It starts with a low, distant rumble that shakes the subterranean bedrock beneath your boots, growing within seconds into a deafening, continuous roar. The German artillery has opened fire. This isn't a standard barrage. It is Trommelfeuer, drum fire, where individual shell detonations merge into one unbroken, terrifying wall of noise. Over 2,000 heavy German guns, ranging from 77mm field pieces to massive 420mm Big Bertha siege mortars, are pounding a front less than 10 miles wide. The concussive shockwaves strike your chest like heavy wooden mallets. The air inside your dugout compresses violently with every hit, blowing out your tallow candle and leaving you in pitch darkness. Dirt rains down from the ceiling in heavy sheets. The earth swells and heaves like a stormy sea. Men around you clamp their hands over their ears, opening their mouths wide to equalize the pressure so their eardrums don't burst from the concussive force. You press your forehead against your knees, curling into a tight ball. This is the true horror of Verdun. Total, absolute powerlessness. You aren't fighting an enemy you can see. You're sitting in a dark dirt hole waiting for an invisible steel cylinder filled with high explosives to land directly on your head. If a heavy shell hits your dugout, you won't even have time to scream. You will be buried alive or vaporized instantly. 6 a.m. The artillery barrage has raged continuously for nearly 4 hours without a single second of pause. Your brain feels bruised inside your skull, and a cold sweat covers your skin. Suddenly, a strange, high-pitched, whistling sound pierces through the thunder, followed by a dull thud hiss as shells detonate with a muffled pop rather than a loud explosion. A sharp, frantic scream echoes down the trench line. Gazoo! Gazoo! Gas! Panic surges through your veins. You drop your rifle and reach frantically for the small metal canister at your hip containing your M2 gas mask. Your fingers are numb, shaking so violently you can barely unbuckle the canvas strap. The Germans are shelling your sector with phosgene gas. Unlike chlorine, which gives off a harsh greenish cloud, phosgene is almost invisible, carrying a subtle smell like fresh-cut hay or musty corn. It is a lethal, suffocating agent that destroys the delicate tissue of your lungs. If you inhale even a small concentration, you won't drop dead immediately. Hours later, your lungs will fill with bodily fluids, causing you to drown on dry land. You pull the rubberized cloth mask over your head, pressing the tight seal against your face and securing the straps behind your ears. The glass eye lenses fog up instantly, cutting your vision down to two blurry circles. Breathing becomes a grueling, suffocating exercise as you inhale hot, rubber-tasting air through the tiny chemical filter. Through the fog lenses, you look at Henri sitting across from you. His mask is secured, his eyes wide with primal terror behind the glass discs, his chest heaving as he fights for breath. Outside, a cloud of heavy gas settles into the trench bottom, clinging to the damp mud like an invisible blanket of death. You sit motionless for over an hour, listening to nothing but the sound of your own jagged breathing inside the mask and the dull, rhythmic thud of artillery shells pounding the earth above. 1:30 p.m. The artillery barrage abruptly shifts, its roaring explosions rolling further behind your position toward the rear supply lines. You know instantly what this means. The German barrage has done its job, and their infantry is moving in to clear what's left of your trench. Wazam! Wazam! The arms! You tear off your gas mask, gasping for fresh air, grab your Lebel rifle, and scramble up the slick, muddy steps out of the dugout into the open trench. The world outside is unrecognizable. The trench walls have collapsed, turned into shallow ditches of churned red mud and shattered timber. Through the thick haze of gray smoke and burning cordite, you see them, hundreds of German infantrymen in field gray uniforms, wearing spiked helmets and carrying heavy Mauser rifles, advancing through the cratered no-man's land in disciplined skirmish lines. You throw your rifle across the muddy lip of the trench wall and begin firing. Crack! The heavy 8mm round snaps out of your barrel, the recoil digging hard into your shoulder. You pull the bolt back, ejecting the spent brass casing into the mud, chambering another round, and firing again. Beside you, a French Chauchat light machine gun stutters into life, spraying heavy fire across the advance. The German line stumbles, men collapsing into shell craters filled with muddy water. But they keep coming. A German squad reaches your section of the trench, leaping into the muddy ditch with drawn bayonets and wooden potato masher grenades. Combat devolves into a primitive, sickening frenzy. There is no strategy here, no grand military tactics, only desperate, close-quarters murder in the mud. A German soldier lunges at you with a fixed bayonet. Instinct takes over. You parry his weapon to the left with the barrel of your Lebel rifle, stepping forward and drive your 17-inch rosily needle bayonet deep into his chest. The steel pierces through his thick wool tunic and ribcage. He gasps, his eyes locking onto yours with horror. You plant your boot against his chest and yank your rifle backward to free the blade, turning just in time to throw a cast-iron F1 fragmentation grenade toward 3 more German soldiers pushing down the traverse. The grenade detonates with a deafening blast, showering the trench with shrapnel and dirt. 5:30 p.m. The German assault has been repulsed, driven back across the crimson mud of no man's land by small arms fire and French 75mm artillery support. The trench is dead silent once again, saving for the groans of the wounded. You sit down against a mound of loose dirt, your hands shaking violently, covered in a mixture of black gunpowder soot, mud, and fresh blood. You look down the trench line. Out of the 40 men in your company who occupied this sector this morning, only 12 are still standing. Henri is lying face down in the mud 10 feet away, his chest torn open by shrapnel. You stare at his motionless body, but you don't cry. You can't. At Verdun, your emotions burn out within the first 48 hours, replaced by a cold, hollow numbness that settles deep into your bones. A young corporal crawls down the trench, tossing a wooden crate of supply rations into your lap. You pull out a tin of singe, canned corned beef, and a chunk of stale, hard rye bread covered in mold. You cut away the moldy crust with your pocket knife and eat the dry bread and cold meat using your filthy, blood-stained fingers. You don't care about hygiene. You don't care about the flies buzzing around the corpses nearby. Your body is screaming for calories, and hunger overrides every sense of human dignity. 9 p.m. Night falls over the battlefield, bringing a pitch-black darkness broken only by the blinding white glare of magnesium star shells floated overhead by both sides to detect night raids. The temperature drops sharply, and a freezing rain begins to fall, filling the trench floor with standing water up to your shins. You drag yourself back down into the shelter, curling up against the cold dirt wall. You pull your wet wool cloak tight around your shoulders, shivering uncontrollably. You know you won't be relieved tomorrow. The French logistics system is straining under the weight of the battle. The single narrow road connecting Verdun to the rear, the Voie Sacrée, the Sacred Way, is packed day and night with thousands of trucks hauling ammunition up to the front and carrying thousands of shattered men away. You reach into the breast pocket of your tunic and pull out a small, crumpled photograph of your wife and young daughter sitting on a wooden porch back in the sunny fields of Provence. The edges of the paper are stained dark with rainwater and dirt. You stare at their faces in the dim flicker of a tiny oil lamp, trying desperately to remember the sound of their voices, the smell of fresh lavender, or what it felt like to walk on land that wasn't exploding. But those memories feel like a dream belonging to a dead man. The person who left home to fight for France doesn't exist anymore. He was buried alive under the heavy mud of Verdun. Over 300,000 men will die on this narrow stretch of French soil before the year is out, and over 400,000 more will be permanently mutilated in mind and body. Historians will later call this battle the meat grinder of Verdun, a grim monument to the total annihilation of an entire generation. You tuck the photograph back into your pocket, slide your hand onto the cold steel barrel of your Lebel rifle, and close your eyes. In less than 4 hours, the sun will rise, the German guns will roar again, and you will wake up to defend this ditch for one more day. If you survived this grueling journey into the hellish trenches of Verdun, smash that like button and hit subscribe to join the channel. Want to see what it was like to survive a single day inside the subterranean tunnels of Vietnam as a tunnel rat? Click the video on your screen right now. Stay curious and stay sharp.